Hey, everybody, welcome to the Uncaped Mama podcast, where I help you shed the superwoman persona and just be. As a mama, as a woman, as a friend, as a supporter of mamas, this is just your place to exist. So, thank you for joining me. I am Dom Gonzalez, and I am your host. Let's dive in. Today's topic is really coming from this revelation that I've had in the last 2 weeks, and then also delving deeper into it in therapy that rocked me initially. I had feelings of like anger, confusion, and then processing it in therapy helped me realize like what was happening. So this is all about me being a control freak. And it rocked me because I said, I'm not trying to control people. Like, I literally thought about ways in which people attempted to control me or manipulate me by their words and their actions to get me to do what they wanted me to do. And that is not the way in which I attempt to control. My control freak, right, that comes out is in trying to be multiple steps ahead all of the time to avoid pain, to avoid harm, to avoid disappointment. And one, it's exhausting, very exhausting. Like to like think about in every situation trying to be multiple steps ahead so that you can avoid and feel prepared for someone else's reactions, someone else's words, um, just like trying to avoid the inevitable, like things that are just going to happen. And I saw this popping up in the ways in which I parented, in the ways in which I showed up in my relationship, and potentially even at work and in business. But what I want to talk about here is how it was showing up and how I was mothering and the detriment that that was potentially having on my children. So in me, just almost like living out these control freak ways unconsciously. Like people would say that I was a control freak, and I'm like, what? No, like no, I'm not. I'm a planner. I am analytical. I am really good at operations and organizing information. I like to research, and those sorts of things. I like to make sure that I'm being accurate in the things that I'm saying and the things that I'm producing and the things that I'm sharing. Like, how is that controlling? I'm literally critical thinking. I'm doing all the things they taught me to do in school, right? How is that me controlling? And people can never really give me an example other than like, okay, yeah, you just listed out all the ways in which you're like a control freak. And so it came up again. It was sort of revealed to me in my own reflection time, and I shared it with my fiance, and he sort of chuckled and he said, "Good luck with that." Now, of course, that reaction was like, "Oh, yeah." Like what? And he said, "Good luck with that," in terms of like good luck with overcoming that. And in the moment, I couldn't ask him more about it because I was like, oh no, he got me messed up, right? But I came back to it a little bit later and said, like, when you laughed, you said good luck with that. Like, what did you mean? And he said, like, I didn't mean it to be like I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I meant it saying like it is so deep in how you just like operate and show up. It's going to be really hard to overcome that because it is essentially a part of who you are and how you live and how you move. And so I took it to therapy and talked through it. And, my therapist and I had a really good conversation about it. And in that conversation, I was talking to her about how I don't feel like I'm a control freak. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm a control freak. I'm trying to plan. I'm trying to be multiple steps ahead to avoid my kids getting hurt or like to make sure we're on time to things or to make sure I'm not adding like more work on myself. I like to have information in advance so things can be planned and I am prepared and I can avoid. And she stopped me at avoid. And she said, coping is what we're working on you learning to do, not avoidance. Like avoidance is not coping. And she said, avoiding is almost impossible in a lot of the situations in which you're attempting to have control. She said, like, you are trying to control a mess and you have two toddlers. There is going to be a mess. You are trying to control and get ahead of, like, maybe they're not being trafficked. You can't. You are trying to avoid and control your child who has autism from like having a meltdown. So you're trying to like perfectly and carefully curate certain things in your home to avoid that when you actually can't control his feelings and his sensory needs at any given time. And so there may be a meltdown. You are trying to like figure out what you're going to feed them at a certain time to avoid blowouts before you leave the house. And she's like, you like quite literally have never been able to figure that out because you can't control our body and the ways in which things digest and when the waste comes out. And it's like the ways in, let me give you an example of like what this looks like. So, and I'm going to explain the detriment and then I'll explain to you what I've learned. So, my youngest is 19 months, which is wild. And she, we're all like needing to develop fine motor skills, right? And what that looks like with children is them developing the skills and the strength and how they're holding their hands, right, to be able to hold a crayon, a pencil, a spoon, a fork, and like to be able to eat, hold a cup, and like move things around in ways that allow them to essentially like take care of themselves in a lot of ways. So brushing their teeth, or maybe they need to learn how to screw something in at some point. All of these things are related to developing your fine motor skills, and there's so many things within that. She goes to daycare and we get pictures, and at daycare I noticed like she's eating with a spoon at daycare, and I'm like, maybe they're just introducing her to it at that school. I'm like, there's no way she's eating with it. And then I share pictures with my mom and my grandma, and they both said in the last few weeks she eats with a spoon. I'm like, I think that, like, yeah, she's holding it at daycare, like, I guess. I go pick her up from daycare a couple weeks ago, like very shortly after, because like God is funny, right? It would occur like this. Shortly after I'm having this conversation with my mom and grandma about this, and um, they say, hold on, y'all. At some point during recording, I knew that there would be some interruption. So that happened. I'm back finishing the situation, and I'm not going to edit this out either because, like, this is real life. So I go and pick her up from daycare, and her teacher says, she's been feeding herself like with a spoon for a while now. Just sort of random conversation. And I'm like, yeah, I saw the like pictures of her holding the spoon. I didn't think she was like actually eating with it. And she's like, no, she eats with a spoon, feeds herself, doesn't want anyone to help her at all. She's really figuring it out. It was eye opening because I was like, oh my goodness. I was avoiding allowing her to eat with a spoon at home because I was afraid of a mess. Literally trying to avoid mess. I, even in my mind, and this is on my Instagram page, even, so y'all can go check. It's a few reels ago, but I even put up there like my motherhood toxic trait is trying to avoid a mess. And there, what that looks like is like there's a limited amount of toys and things that are out in certain places, not letting the kids like eat with spoons. We don't, like, if they have spaghetti or whatever, like pasta with a sauce, like, and not they, but really my daughter, but like I'm trying to feed it to them, or like the applesauce I'm putting you know in a cup with a little bit of watered down apple juice, and like that's how they can consume it, right? I am literally trying to avoid the mess. Why? Because depending on how they splash and where it goes, like that could lead into me like wiping the walls and the baseboards and like the crevices of the floor, like just like deep cleaning every day. That is a lot for me given everything that I have to do every single day, and I'm trying to avoid that. And so That is how the control freak was showing up. And it's like so deep in me that I'm like, how often am I doing that? How often am I exhausting myself, which is having a ripple effect on all the other things that I need to be doing? I'm doing all of that, right? So I'm tired, but like now I'm limiting my children's development unintentionally. Like they're gonna get messy, like to learn and to evolve and to grow. There's going to be mess. Yes, son, there is. There's gonna be mess, and I have to allow that to happen. So how did I move past this? In this revelation, I kind of sat with it, and then I said, okay, let's just start doing something. So for a week now, my daughter's been eating with the spoon at home, and she's done great. And y'all, there is not any more mess than any other day. Like truly, there's like no more mess. I was gonna wipe down the high chair and sweep out whatever crumbs or whatever were in her chair, and I was gonna sweep them off the floor anyway. There's literally like the way I had catastrophized it. It made it seem like there was gonna be a huge amount of just like excessive mess. It has not happened. Will it happen one day? Maybe. It hasn't happened. The other way that I am doing that is letting them like play with the toothbrush and like explore it. We are trying new foods. I took my kids to a local beach over the weekend. I knew that I wanted to ultimately take them somewhere. And, you know, uh, my son's dad mentioned it as like a place we could go during our supervised visits. And I'm like, that sounds cool. It's in our area. And we went. And I started, like, I almost canceled it before I had this revelation in therapy last week because I'm like, oh my gosh, my son is going to like try to drink the water in this lake, and then he may put the sand in his mouth. Maybe I just need to wait till he's older to do X, Y, and Z. Let me just wait till they're older to take them on the plane. Let me wait till they're older and they understand things before I do whatever. But they can't get older and learn and have the scenario for me to even teach them something for them to get used to if I'm avoiding it. And so it was fine. There was no issues with like parking. There was no long walk. Yes, my son did put sand in his mouth. Like, yeah, you did. You remember that? He put sand in his mouth, but he didn't drink the water. He splashed in it. We did. We had a good time. It was hot. I mean, it's Texas, so like it was hot. We can't avoid that. But overall, it was fine. It was fine. They had their sunscreen, they had their snacks, I brought Pedialyte, just to make sure, like knowing it was going to be hot, that they could get their electrolytes and things like that. It was good. We came home, we took a bath. I was like, the other thing I was afraid of is like, oh, the mess of cleaning up sand from the beach. I immediately threw everything in the washer, including the clothes I had on. I gave the kids a bath, set them up to like take a snack. Their nana was there, so like she hung out with them while I took a shower to like get all the sand off of me. We checked their hair, washed hair, like it was fine. So if I decided to go ahead and record this podcast episode because I was sort of dealing with this in silence. And then I saw multiple things on social media from other mom creators who deal with the same thing. Literally, like trying to avoid mess, trying to like control situations, be multiple steps ahead. And I know that the reason is because there are so many things we don't talk about that come with parenting and with mothering that require a lot of our time and our thought and our intention, and we are already potentially tired, overwhelmed, just like in need of a break. We are trying to figure out, how do I do this efficiently and with joy? And in our mind, we're possibly thinking like, this is not going to be fun if it results in this. And I feel you. I see you. I am you. Clearly, like I'm talking about it now. And I want you to know it is okay to try something. We can't avoid everything. Uh, Avoidance is not coping. We can learn like, how do we cope when those things come up? How do we ask for additional support as we are working through these things? How do we move forward when like maybe something huge does happen and it wasn't joyful? Who do we have to come help us clean? Is it time for me to start looking for just like a weekly deep cleaner? that can get into the crevices of things in the kitchen, and in the dining room that maybe I can't see. Like, it's a good way to start to have conversations and to really think about, how do I do these things and ask for the support I need and try to get the support that I need so that I'm not limiting my children's growth. I'm not overwhelming myself mentally and emotionally, and we can still thrive as mamas. So I hope that this was relatable to someone. I hope y'all enjoyed hearing my little boy's voice in the background. Um, I hope that you are giving me and other mamas grace. I I record where I can record and while it's on the top of my mind. So um, I hope that this resonated, that this is helpful, that it gives you some insight into mommyhood and some of the things that I think a lot of moms are feeling and are doing and just don't feel comfortable talking about out loud and publicly. I know that because it was like happening in real time for me in the last few weeks, and then to see the other moms who I follow, like several of them saying the same thing, I know that there's probably millions of moms thinking the same thing. Like, I don't even want to say thousands. I think there's probably a ton of moms thinking that, because I've had people ask, like, what does cleanup look like in your living room? Because you just keep the toys out, or whatever. And I'm like, I started trying to clean up after my kids every second. And then I was like, this is their house. And it's easier for them to play in this like family living room area where it's open. And they've got, a toy box out here and things to play with out here. And when we wind down for nap time or bedtime, that is when I walk through for 3 to 5 minutes and pick things up. I do not feel ashamed of that. Like, you walk into my house, it is clear that kids live there, because they do. And I've gotten over the shame of that. I'm also like, don't nobody even be over here like that, so it's not that deep. Once I get a home where like I can entertain, there will obviously be more separate spaces. But if you see a toy, kids live here, and it's gonna look like it, and that's okay. So I hope that that resonates again. I hope that that helps someone. I hope that it was relatable. And I hope that if you are not a parent, but you are friends to parents and you are a supporter of parents and moms in your life, that this gives you a new view of what might be going through their head. It prompts you to have a conversation, and it gets you maybe thinking about a different way in which you can support mamas. Share this, of course. Make sure you follow Uncaped Mama on Twitter. I mean, not Twitter. Not Twitter. Instagram and YouTube. These podcasts now upload directly to YouTube, so you can stream them either here on Spotify or on YouTube. So go check it out. But absolutely make sure that you engage with me on Uncaped Mama on Instagram. I would love to get to know you, to share more with you, for you to see more things that I'm just sharing as I attempt to continue to be real and relatable and inspirational to other mamas out there who are facing similar things to me, or who just want perspective. Like, maybe you're not going through the same things as me, and you won't, but it gives you some perspective on how to support and see other mamas. Thank you for tuning in to the Uncaped Mama podcast. Follow me on social media on Instagram, Uncaped Mama, and care_Bath and Body. I hope that you found this episode inspiring, relatable, and impactful. And I hope that this triggers a thought in you to be a better support system to a mama near you. Help her to put down the superwoman persona, to put her cape down, to be whole, to be all that she is destined to be as a mother, and more. See you next time.